It is a routine that many of you know well and likely practice religiously. You wake up, put on your comfortable shoes, and head out for your daily walk. For decades, the medical community, myself included, has praised walking as the gold standard of exercise for older adults. It is low impact, accessible, and excellent for cardiovascular health. However, as we look deeper into the physiology of aging, specifically regarding muscle atrophy and fall prevention, we are finding that walking, while necessary, is fundamentally insufficient for preserving independence. There is a physiological gap between simply moving and staying strong, and that gap is where frailty begins. One of the most concerning misconceptions I encounter in my practice is the belief that walking alone maintains muscle mass. This is anatomically incorrect. Electromyography studies, which measure the electrical activity in muscles, have shown us something quite startling about the gluteus maximus, the largest muscle in the human body. During a standard walk on flat ground, this powerful muscle is activated to only 32% of its maximum capacity. This means that for the majority of your daily activity, nearly 2/3 of your primary stabilizer muscle remains dormant. Over time, this leads to a condition we often refer to as gluteal amnesia. Your brain effectively forgets how to recruit these muscles because they're rarely challenged beyond that low threshold. The result is not just a loss of strength, but a loss of the protective scaffolding that keeps your pelvis aligned and your balance secure. We see the consequences of this in the clinic constantly. Patients who walk 3 miles a day are baffled when they struggle to stand up from a low sofa or feel wobbly on uneven grass. This happens because walking is a linear, repetitive motion that does not challenge stability or lateral strength. As we age, if we do not intentionally stimulate these fast-twitch muscle fibers, they atrophy at a rate significantly faster than slow-twitch fibers. There is, however, a specific protocol of movements that targets these neglected areas, reversing that atrophy and restoring the structural integrity of the lower body. One movement in particular, which I will discuss later, is often the deciding factor in whether a patient can live alone in their 80s. Before we examine the specific biomechanics of these movements, I would appreciate it if you could take a moment to engage with our community here. Please leave a comment below telling me your name, your age, and where you are watching from. I make it a point to read through these comments because it is incredibly encouraging to see a global community of older adults taking proactive steps to manage their health. If you find this information helpful, please like the video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue this conversation. Let us begin addressing this deficit with a movement that directly challenges the vertical loading of the hip joint. We must look at the step-up. While this may seem like a trivial action, essentially mimicking climbing a stair, in a clinical setting, the ability to perform a controlled step-up is a potent biomarker for longevity and fall risk. When you walk, momentum helps you carry forward. When you step up, you must generate force against gravity using a single leg. This engages the stabilizers of the hip and knee in a way walking never can. A study from the University of Florida highlighted that practicing this movement improved single-leg strength by over 25% in older adults. The key here is not the height of the step, but the control. We want to see the nervous system relearning how to stabilize the entire body weight on one limb. When you place your foot on a low platform and press through the heel, you are sending a high-magnitude signal to the bone and muscle that demands adaptation. You are telling your body that it still needs to be capable of vertical power. This stimulates bone density in the femoral neck, a common fracture site, and forces the gluteus maximus to fire completely to extend the hip. If we neglect this vertical strength, we eventually lose the ability to navigate curbs, buses, and stairs safely, shrinking our world to flat surfaces only. Once we understand the importance of vertical strength through stepping, we must address the issue of posture and hip extension. As we age, our bodies have a tendency to curl inward, shoulders roll forward, and the hips remain slightly flexed, largely due to the amount of time we spend sitting. This creates a mechanical tightening of the hip flexors at the front of the thigh. Through a process called reciprocal inhibition, when these front muscles are tight, they chemically signal the opposing muscles, the glutes, to relax and stay long. This is a disaster for your posture. It leads to the senior shuffle, where the stride shortens because the leg cannot extend fully behind the body. To counteract this, we utilize the glute kickback. This is not merely a leg lift, it is a neurological reset. By standing tall and extending the leg backward without arching the lower back, we force the glute to contract against that tightness in the front. This restores the natural range of motion in the hip joint, allowing for a longer, more confident stride. It prevents the lower back from taking over the work of walking, which is a primary cause of non-specific lumbar pain in patients over 60. This connection between gluteal weakness and back pain leads us inevitably to the floor or a firm mattress for the glute bridge. This is perhaps the most therapeutic movement for the aging spine. Many of my patients suffer from lower back pain not because their backs are weak, but because their glutes are asleep. When the glutes fail to support the pelvis, the lower back muscles are forced to compensate, working overtime to keep you upright. The glute bridge fixes this firing order. By lying on your back and lifting the hips, you are removing the variable of balance, allowing you to focus entirely on muscular contraction. This is a safe, closed-chain exercise that decompresses the spine while strengthening the posterior chain. Clinical data suggests significant reductions in chronic back pain when this movement is introduced because it teaches the body to lift and stabilize using the hips rather than leveraging the vertebrae. It's about teaching the brain that the hips are the engine of movement, sparing the spine from unnecessary wear and tear. However, moving forward and backward is half the equation. We must address lateral stability, which is governed by the gluteus medius and minimus, the muscles on the side of the hip. These are the invisible muscles that prevent you from falling sideways. Statistically, lateral falls are the most dangerous for hip fractures because the impact is direct on the trochanter of the femur. Walking does almost nothing to strengthen these side muscles. This is why we introduce seated band abductions. By sitting and pressing the knees outward against resistance, we isolate these lateral stabilizers without the risk of falling. This movement seems small, almost imperceptible, yet strength in the hip abductors is the #1 predictor of fall recovery. When you trip, it's the side of your hip that reflexively fires to pull your leg out wide and catch your balance. If these muscles are weak from disuse, that reflex is too slow or too weak to stop the momentum of the fall. Strengthening them essentially widens your base of support, ensuring that even when you're on one foot, your pelvis remains level and does not drop to one side, a phenomenon known as the Trendelenburg gait. This progression from basic activation to lateral stability leads us to the most complex, yet arguably the most vital movement for functional independence, the modified split squat. In the fitness world, you might hear this referred to as a Bulgarian split squat, a name that sounds intimidating and athletic, but for our purposes, we view it as a supported single-leg stand. The logic behind this movement is rooted in the concept of asymmetry. Almost no one is perfectly symmetrical. We all have a dominant leg and a weaker leg. Over decades, this imbalance grows. When we stand up from a chair or climb stairs using both legs, the strong leg compensates for the weak one, masking the deficit. This continues until the strong leg becomes injured or fatigued, and suddenly the patient realizes they cannot support themselves. The split squat strips away this compensation. By placing one foot behind you on a support and lowering your weight on the front leg, you force that single limb to handle the entire load of stability and strength. It challenges proprioception, your body's ability to sense its position in space, which naturally declines with age. This movement integrates everything we have discussed: the vertical drive of the step-up, the hip extension of the kickback, and the lateral stability of the abduction. It effectively bulletproofs the knees and hips by ensuring that each leg is independently capable of supporting your body weight. When I see a patient in their 70s master this movement, even with a shallow range of motion, I know their risk of a debilitating fall has dropped precipitously.
They are not just building muscle, they are building neurological trust in their own limbs. Ultimately, the goal of introducing these 5 movements, step-ups, kickbacks, bridges, abductions, and split squats, is not to transform you into a bodybuilder. The goal is to shift your mindset regarding what exercise means after the age of 60. We need to move away from the idea that exercise is purely about burning calories or cardiovascular output. At this stage of life, exercise is a prescription for autonomy. It's about preserving the ability to perform activities of daily living, or ADLs, without assistance. When we rely solely on walking, we are managing our heart health, which is vital, but we are neglecting our structural health. The body is incredibly adaptive, regardless of age. We used to believe that muscle loss was inevitable and irreversible.
We now know that thanks to neuroplasticity and the responsiveness of skeletal muscle, you can regain strength and coordination well into your 80s and 90s. But it requires specificity. It requires doing the things that feel slightly difficult, the things that challenge your balance in a controlled environment, so that you are prepared for the uncontrolled environment of the real world. Consistency is the key currency here. You do not need high intensity, you need high frequency and correct form. By integrating these targeted movements into your routine, you are doing more than just exercising. You are actively engineering a future where you remain the pilot of your own life, moving with confidence, stability, and strength.